picture this little scenario with me. It is the year of our Lord 2015, and you're sitting in your carpentry class. It's a pretty nice class. You like it a lot, and you'll soon mourn its death after you leave middle school. Your teacher rolls in with one of those big square TVs, so you know it's going to be a good day. You clutch your Applejack squishy you brought with you as the VHS goes in and the screen goes blue. A movie, you think. A Goofy movie. And thus, your little 13-year-old self is graced with the greatest film of all time. Disney's legacy characters are some of the most influential cartoons of all time, beaten only by, I think, the Looney Tunes. They cover everything you could possibly imagine. Shorts, films, TV shows, comics, color, black and white, being wholesome, being racist, and so much merch you could basically live in it. Despite not having a specific canon, there are many people who try to imagine one so that these cartoons aren't just part of an ever-corrupting brand, but characters that are part of a story, with lives and struggles and relationships. And I was one of them. Y'all need to understand, Disney, and especially their legacy characters, were my life. I would literally spend hours watching the old cartoons and making up rough timelines and stories for them. It's the reason why the DuckTales reboot is like my favorite Western cartoon. And why I love the House of Mouse as well. It puts all of these iconic characters together, but instead of using them to teach preschoolers like Disney often does, they were treated with a certain level of seriousness, all while still keeping its silly nature. And by far what I think is the best example of this is none other than 1995's A Goofy Movie. With its 30th anniversary just occurring and a Disney Plus special to boot, I say it's about time that I talk about this father-son duo.
I'll be right back, my little possum pal.
My life's a living. Hello, little buddy.
A Goofy Movie was originally created as a tie-in film for the Disney afternoon show Goof Troop. The basic idea for the show was that Goofy was a single father of a boy named Max and their misadventures in the town of Spoonerville, Ohio. Their main rival is Pete, who was also given a family here, and it's a playful contrast between the two households. The show is fun and simple, with no real care for any continuity. A bit of a play-in-the-background type show. Originally, the movie was going to keep Max as a 10-year-old, but after some discussion, they chose to age him up as a high schooler instead. And I think that was for the best. Not that a 10-year-old Max couldn't have worked, it definitely can, but after 78 episodes, I'm sure they've already exhausted all they could do with that. I remember a whole episode about Max wanting a mom, and one about Goofy not paying the bills. Which, damn, can you imagine if the show was taken seriously? No. Instead, this movie is about Goofy trying to save his son from ending up in the electric chair. Goofy lore goes kinda hard. I don't think I have to explain how good this movie is. There are a plethora of videos all about it. The animation is beautiful, the characters are charming and full of depth, and a sweet yet silly story about a father and son learning to not only get along, but accept each other too. If there is one thing this movie just oozes, it's the 90s. My little Gen Z self was a little late, so I can't say if it was actually like this, but my god, is this one of the most dated movies I have ever seen. We got Michael Jackson, baggy pants, skateboards, film tape, cassettes, animatronics, waterbeds, funny slang, and that damn electric chair. And yet somehow, someway, this movie is timeless? Obviously, even to my 13-year-old self, it was pretty clear that it took place in another time. But any elements you could say are dated are completely overshadowed by its main message. My only real gripe with this movie is the songs. Yeah, I know they're nostalgic to many, but I was never really into them. Except the Powerline songs. Those are straight bangers. The voice cast was also incredible. The legendary Bill Farmer and Jim Cummings being the current voices of Goofy and Pete, Jason Marsden now being the unofficial official voice of Max, who also voiced Kovu from The Lion King too, and thus changing the brain chemistry of thousands of teenage girls twice in a row. And Pauly Shore, who went on to voice another character of Legends. In 2002, a direct-to-video sequel called An Extremely Goofy Movie would come out. And though it's not as memorable as the original, I still think it's pretty good. Definitely one of the better Disney sequels out there. This might come as a surprise, but Disney did not care much about this movie while it was being made. From the voice actors to the animators, a lot of them just saw it as a job based on a cartoon no one really cared about. Next thing they knew, this quick buck of a movie reeking in pure 90s aesthetics would end up becoming a timeless classic. Bill Farmer and Jason Marston have spoken a lot about their movie's surprise success, and now that a Goofy movie is officially 30 years old, the Big D themselves want to cash in on it too. And so this was made. So I guess I better go ahead and watch it. And so I will.
Because I was worried, don't they want to hear Goofy when they hear a Goofy movie?
I loved it. Seriously, such a beautiful documentary. It gives so much insight into the mind of the creators and exactly what they wanted this movie to be. I highly, highly recommend watching it for any Goofy movie fan, or any animation fan for that matter. Trust me, when you hear these artists speak, it completely changes how you watch these movies. I won't talk about the documentary as a whole, as I encourage you to watch it, so I'll only touch on the parts that I found interesting. The director of the movie was Kevin Lima. After attending Cal Arts, he worked on many movies such as The Little Mermaid and Oliver and Company. At the time, Disney wanted to make a Goof Troop movie, and they gave the director role to him. One thing Kevin Lima stresses is that he worked on feature films, not TV, so the pipelines clashed a lot during production. Something I thought was interesting was that in old interviews, Kevin made it clear that the movie and TV show were entirely different things. They used the same characters, sure, but he disregarded most of what Goof Troop had. I always thought it was meant to be a spin-off from the start, like it was just Goof Troop but Max is aged up, but I guess not. Another thing was the mention of Jeffrey Katzenberg. For those who don't know, he was a very debated figure among this era of Disney. On one hand, he helped the studio a lot. On the other hand, no one liked him. But at least according to Kevin, Katzenberg was like the #1 supporter of the Goofy movie. And he was the only one who pushed for the movie to have a heart and for it to be more than just gags. They made it clear that one of his goals, and the goals of the staff as well, was if they could compete with the big theatrical releases but on a smaller budget. The documentary focused a lot on humanizing Goofy. How new it was, how strange it was, how emotional it could be, specifically with the father-son relationship they were leaning on. How do you balance emotion and silliness while still keeping the integrity of who Goofy is? That was something the staff struggled a lot with. It even got to the point where Katzenberg wanted someone else to voice Goofy because it sounded insincere. I think we can all agree that Disney dodged a bullet there. One thing Kevin did have was the idea of Goofy being really nostalgic. A lot of what he tries to do with Max is stuff he did with his own dad. It was really cool to see him talk about these scenes and his thought process behind them. The fact that this movie so clearly takes place in the 90s was a very intentional choice by Kevin Lima. According to him, he wanted a film that spoke to the people of the day of course being the 90s. Powerline's whole character was basically that, his music being treated like a normal pop song of the time. And apparently the singer only did like 2 takes, he was that good. Remember, this was a time where Disney was mostly doing fairy tales. They almost never did something in the modern day. So that in itself was actually quite the risk. And now that I think about it, that might be the reason why this movie isn't dated, at least not in the bad way. It was more so a celebration of the era than trying to be hip with the kids. At least that's what I think. And then the movie came out. And it did not do well. It was a flop, both financially and critically, and actually let me talk about those reviews. At least in the documentary, there were 2 main criticisms that I could gather. The first was in making Goofy into a more serious character, and the second was bringing Goofy into the 90s. I think the first one shows just how strange a serious Goofy really was at the time. People really did just see him as nothing more than a silly cartoon character. Hell, even most of the staff did. I don't know if this is a good comparison, but I guess it'd be giving like, I don't know, Peppa Pig something deeper, I don't know. For the second point, that honestly just baffles me. Like, yeah, the Goofy shorts were more prevalent in the 40s, but that doesn't mean he has to be stuck in the 40s. I think part of it might have to do with people not being accustomed to a Disney film set in the modern day, especially with a legacy character. It has to be from a bygone era, or it loses its luster or something. It was really sad to see them talk about the film's failure. Like, for years, these people believed that no one liked their movie. Kevin moved on to work on Tarzan, another goated film, and that was that. Little did they know that once this little thing hit VHS, things would change forever. The last part of the documentary focused a lot on the sudden fan base it garnered, and more surprisingly, YouTubers. The craziest part is that I recognized a few of them. To say that all of those video essays and reactions didn't boost the film's popularity would be an understatement. The best part was how some responded to the old reviews at the time. The staff were utterly shocked to learn how popular it ended up becoming. I'm sure Kevin Lima is more than grateful, but I do wonder if there's a little bit of annoyance that the film was so poorly received at first. Turns out this time capsule of a movie was somehow ahead of its time.
It's one of those rare films that has caught on and just continually grow.
And I love that I get to see you all the time. You know, sometimes you work at
That's great.
You never get to see.
I think it's safe to say that a Goofy movie has become a staple of pop culture, at least among Disney fans. And I think to many, it's forever changed how we see Goofy today. He is no longer that silly character Disney made back in the day who only existed for gags. Now he was a father, trying to figure out how best to raise his son despite his clumsy, cartoony personality. Although Goofy is still his silly self in most modern Disney media, every once in a while they still remember what this movie did. From Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, where Max is the most adorable little kid I've ever seen, to Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas, where everyone's in creepy CGI, to The House of Mouse, to even the DuckTales reboot. Will Max ever appear in new Disney media? I don't know. He is very much tied to the 90s and early 2000s. But hey, Goofy was tied to the 40s and that didn't stop them from bringing him to the modern day. Whether or not Disney will bring this side of Goofy's character back, its legacy is not forgotten. Kevin Lima spoke a lot about how The Jungle Book inspired him as a child, that it was the reason he wanted to become an animator and a filmmaker, and how he wishes a Goofy movie will do the same to some other kid in the future. A Goofy movie wasn't that to me. That title goes to The Little Mermaid, but it was still a massive contributor to my love for animation and art and storytelling. How one story can make you see a character in a whole different way and in turn help you with your own life. It's wonderful, and in an era where it feels like we're just getting the same regurgitated slop over and over again, it's important to remember the works of these classics. That at one point, they too started as little films that people had little faith in. And once you're watching every move that I make, you gotta believe that I got what it takes to stand out above the crowd, even if I gotta shout out loud. Till mine is the only face that you'll see. I gotta stare